Good morning, grade 11. This is the first video of topic 4. I just want to show you where to find all the resources, and I'll make sure the videos are on here as well as sharing it through Microsoft Teams. So from the home page, if you go down to the side and we're going to topic 4, movement analysis. Okay, there's 3 different bits for movement analysis. There's one about how do muscles work and what's going on with the muscles. Then there's a little bit about what type of movement is called what. So if it's rotational, if it's flexion, things like that. And then there's a bit of physics in this unit as well. So this will take us quite a few weeks to get through. Okay, first thing we're going to look at today is a beginning bit of this PowerPoint presentation about nerve propagation and motor units. Okay, so it's 4.1.1, label a diagram of a motor unit, all right, and find out what a motor unit is, and then explain the role of neurotransmitters in stimulating skeletal muscle contraction. To get through this PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to do a series of short videos. You should pause the videos and you should be taking notes in your workbooks. You should be drawing diagrams and labeling things in your workbooks as well. Okay, so it's not enough just to press play on the video and then think that that's done. You do need to pause the video and write down some notes. Okay, if you're looking at the textbook, these pages are the ones that you want to be looking at now. So page 75, 76 and the top of 77 up to the mechanics of muscle contraction. Okay. So, questions that we might want to answer. What are motor neurons? Sorry, there's an R missing there, there's a typo there. What are sensory neurons? Explain in as much detail as possible the loop from sensing a stimulus to reacting to it. So, for example, if you put your hand on a hot plate or an oven or stand on a plug or do something that makes you jerk your hand away or your foot away, whatever it is, what are the mechanics behind that? And we'll look at the different types of motor units as well. Okay, so as an introduction, nerve propagation, you're going to see this word quite a lot, is a way in which a nerve transmits an electrical impulse. Okay, in order to understand this, we need to understand the structure of a motor neuron. And before we go into motor neurons, I want to look at the different types of neurons that we have. Okay, so this diagram was taken from BBC Bitesize. It's a very simple diagram showing a reflex arc. Okay, so this is just showing you what happens, and you can see there's some different colours on here representing different types of neurons or nerves, and you can see that this hand is over a candle. Alright, so we assume that the candle has burnt the person's hand. So what happens to make that hand then move away? Well, information needs to get to the spinal cord. Okay, so a neuron, this purple one here, a nerve, or a group of nerve cells, all right, an electrical impulse is going to travel along that neuron. And if we look at the key down here, we see that that's a sensory neuron. All right, it's going to travel along that neuron. And then this is a cross-section of your spinal cord. Obviously, the scale is not the same, all right? Your spinal cord is not the same size as your arm. All right, remember your spinal cord runs down the hole in the center of your vertebral column. All right, so this impulse is going to travel along here. It's going to propagate along here until it gets to your spinal cord. All right, so your sensory neuron stops, and then there's a little space here. That's called a synapse, and that's something that we're going to come back to a bit later. And then the impulse travels on through your relay neuron. Okay, you can see the green one is called a relay neuron, a bit like in a relay race where you hand the baton from one person to another. Okay, and then the impulse is going to cross another synapse, and then it's going to go to this blue neuron here, which is attached to your muscle. And what that does is it makes your muscle contract, all right, and then that muscle contraction moves your arm out the way. This particular neuron here is called a motor neuron. So we have a sensory neuron that senses the stimulus. We have a relay neuron that passes the impulse from one neuron to another, and then we have your motor neuron, which takes it to the muscle to cause the movement. Okay, I'd like you to pause this video and just draw a diagram of that in your books. If you can use colour for the different neurons, that would be great. You can also see here in the spinal cord that an impulse does go from your relay neuron, and that's going to go to your brain. All right, that's when you're going to start to experience the pain. You only experience pain because an impulse tells your brain that something hurts. Okay, so quite often if you burn yourself, if you hurt yourself, you might find that you've moved your hand away before you've had the sensation that it hurts. Okay, and that's just to do with this nerve impulse coming down here to your muscle before it's got up to your brain. Okay, here's another example of a reflex arc. This one is the patellar reflex. You might have experienced a doctor doing this, where they hit your knee with a hammer, okay, and then obviously your muscles in your knee start to contract. All right, so you can see the different neurons here. Again, we've got the sensory neuron coming in. All right, this one doesn't show the relay neuron, but there would be one there. And then the motor neuron coming out to the muscle. Okay, so you can see what happens when the knee gets hit. All right, so there's always a short delay between the hitting of the knee and then the movement of the leg. Okay, and that delay is when the impulses are traveling or being propagated along the sensory neuron, the relay neuron, and then the motor neuron. Okay, so what does the motor neuron actually look like? We do need to know this structure. I'm going to talk through it, and then I'm going to play a video on here that shows you how to draw a motor neuron and label it. So don't worry about labeling as it is here. Okay, but what we have is like all cells, we have a nucleus. All right, so within the cell body, which is kind of the head of the motor neuron, there is a nucleus inside here. All right, that cell body has got lots of extensions to it, and those extensions can meet a variety of other nerves to pass impulses on. Those extensions are called dendrites. Okay, so we've got the cell body with the nucleus and the dendrites. We then have this section here, which is known as the axon. This particular axon is branched, okay, there's two branches to it, but a lot of axons are just in one straight line, and some of these can be really, really long, okay, so you might have one the length of your leg in your body, all right, and it takes an impulse from one place to another, okay. So an impulse is going to travel down the axon until it gets to the end, okay? And then these dendrites end in something called the motor end plate, all right? You might see along the axon there's a kind of a fatty layer around it. And if you imagine the axon is like a pencil, okay? If you were going to wrap some sellotape around the pencil, that's what these things are like here, all right? And it's called the myelin sheath. It's a fatty sheath that wraps around the neuron. If people have problems when that myelin sheath breaks down, then that can cause some quite severe movement problems or paralysis, okay? In between each of these, so imagine you've got your pencil, you've wrapped an area with tape around, okay? Then you leave a little space and then you wrap tape around the next place. That space is really, really important, and it's called the node of Ranvier. And if you click on a couple of slides in the presentation, you'll see how to spell that. Okay? When an impulse is propagated, when an impulse travels along this neuron, it actually jumps from node to node. Okay, so that myelin sheath is an insulating sheath, and then the impulse jumps along in the nodes between those myelin sheaths, and that's really important for how impulses propagate along nerves. Okay, so here's just a video to show you exactly how to draw and label the structure of a motor neuron.
Drawing and labelling the structure of a motor neuron is something that you can practice to ensure all of the relevant parts are clear. Your diagram should include labels for the cell body, the dendrites, the nucleus found within the cell body, the axon, the node of Ranvier, the space between the Schwann cells, and then the Schwann cells which form the myelin sheath, the motor end plates, and finally the cell membrane which surrounds the entire neuron.
Okay, so again, you can look on the PowerPoint and find that video to play it a bit slower, okay? So this is just some text to say what we've already said. The neuron contains a cell body and an axon. The cell body contains a nucleus, which is the center of the operation for the neuron and dendrites. And the axon is the long, thin part of the neuron. It carries the electrical impulses. The end of the axon, you've got axon terminals or an end plate terminal and synaptic knobs, and they have contact with the muscle. All right, so these motor neurons, they start with the cell body, and then the end bit of it attaches to the muscle, and it's going to make the muscle contract. Surrounding the axon is the fatty covering called the myelin sheath, which acts to insulate the nerve. Okay, the sheath is not continuous, and it has these breaks, nodes, known as the nodes of Ranvier. Okay, so we'll leave that there for today. What you should have in your books is a diagram of the reflex arc that's labelled. Okay, you should have a diagram of a motor neuron, and then your diagram of your motor neuron should be annotated with this extra information. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.